changed again. The guest list vetted, entertainment fixed, and we have the impossible task of ensuring that each year everything is the same, and, at the same time, utterly different."
"It sounds extremely demanding, Mr. Hotchkiss." Kitty looked around her. "But this is a beautiful location." The patio gave way to green lawns, which sloped toward formal gardens and the Hudson River, and backed up against the majestic brick-and-stone clubhouse, which had once been home to a Vanderbilt granddaughter.
"It is much more pleasant than trying to do something in Manhattan."
"Hotchkiss!" Mrs. Bashore trilled, just as a long-haired Oriental beckoned to her secretary from the far side of the terrace.
"If you will excuse me."
He sounded flustered.
"I should go take care of business."
Kitty left him to negotiate the competing demands for his attention and wandered off to explore the grounds before the party began. She made her way past trimmed topiaries through a vine-covered pergola and down neatly graveled paths that led to a fountain burbling at the center of a peaceful Italian garden. In the distance, ships steamed up and down the broad expanse of the Hudson. Kitty watched the water surge in their wake for a few quiet moments. Just a year and a half ago, in the spring of 1914, she had been nothing more than a recent boarding school graduate arriving by sea to set foot on home soil for the first time. She'd been born abroad, and as a child had followed her businessman father on his travels through the Indies and the Orient. Then, for almost a decade, she boarded at the Mrs. Dancy's school in Switzerland until he sent for her to join him in New York. She had applied for the position at the ladies' page after she'd settled in and grown accustomed to her new town. Without any practical experience, she'd been certain she wouldn't be selected. But somehow Miss Busby had hired Kitty as her apprentice, and then set her to opening mail, reading proofs, judging cookery contests, and every now and then, writing a piece about domestic matters. The Morgan shooting, which reawakened Kitty's urge to write a real news story, seemed like just the latest instance of how the world could turn on a dime. Last summer, an assassin's bullet in far-off Sarajevo had launched the entire continent into war. This May, a torpedo from a German U-boat had struck the majestic ocean liner Lusitania, which sank in a mere 18 minutes, killing nearly 1,200 passengers, 128 of them Americans, and it felt as though the United States might be sucked into Europe's madness. Kitty turned away from the river to a shady path that wound its way toward the club's golf course.
"The example of America must be a special example," the president had said in his rousing speech in the aftermath of the Lusitania tragedy. "The example of America must be the example not merely of peace because it will not fight, but of peace because peace is the healing and elevating influence of the world and strife is not."
The clack of hedge cutters jolted Kitty from her reverie. A gardener trimming bushes with a ferocious pair of blades scowled as she walked by. She came across a groundskeeper shoveling manure into a wheelbarrow outside a 2.5-story yellow brick building. With its tiled roof and arched windows reaching all the way to the roofline, it looked formal, but the layout didn't seem right for a residence. "What is this place?"
"It's the stables, miss."
"Is that so?" Kitty smiled to herself. Some horses had all the luck. A couple strolled along arm in arm. He was big and burly in his formal attire. She was about half his size and wore a lavender gown with mutton-chop sleeves that overwhelmed her petite form. "I don't know what we're doing here," the woman said to her companion, before her words were drowned out by the sound of touring cars crunching down the gravel drive. Kitty hurried back to the party, where the band had begun to play, and chose an inconspicuous position beside a pillar on the terrace from which to observe the goings-on. The lawns soon filled with gentlemen in dark suits and ladies in wispy organza gowns. Pearls glowed around necks, diamonds sparkled on languid wrists. Silver trays bobbed up and down as waiters made their way through the crowd, proffering bubbly drinks and savory appetizers. Children darted between the grown-ups' legs. Bang! "You're dead, Willie!" A gunshot went off. Kitty searched for the source of the sound. One of the boys had fired his toy pistol.
"I'm not Willie," his playmate cried indignantly. "R2."
"Why don't you play Cowboys and Indians?" Kitty suggested. The boys stared at her in confusion.
"Why would we want to play that?"